Looks pretty good in here, bro.
Not so bad, right?
Yeah. Welcome to Stand Up.
Yo, welcome to Stand Up, dude. Where are we?
We are in sunny Miami at AI Engineer Conference. Just kicked off. We got a little break here. Starts up again in about 15 minutes for the next speaker.
We started the day here. We went to a really dope welcome party last night. That was just so fun. I love coming to these events because there's no agenda. Like the people that are attending this don't have an agenda. I don't feel like I'm being bombarded with sales. I don't feel like I'm getting pitched for a product every two steps. Not everybody's just like completely nerding out on dev talk. Like we met like a whole bunch of really
We
fun
are for
people.
sure today. For sure.
So we're gonna transition today. We're like fully drinking from a fire hose, but we already saw some really cool opening presentations. I mean, first of all, I gotta like shout out Gabe Greenberg and the whole team here at G2I. Like Gabe's introduction, getting super emotional about his story. Like talk about the wind being at your back when you're in that type of a health situation. The only thing you can do is win. Like the only thing you can do is try to be motivated and find your way. So that was just really special. And then, we heard some really great opening remarks that are between you, me, and the wall in our podcast we talk about all the time.
Yeah, well, I've quoted this person quite often. Is the opening remarks was Dax Rad's talk, which was all about that your ideas aren't that good,
Right.
and how now that we can ship faster, the idea matters more, and we don't have any of those filters in place, so our products tend to rot really quickly. And we see this even with ourselves. I saw this with myself. I was saying how I'm letting customers demand more features that normally I would have pushed back on because of budget, time, and suddenly the product is what the customer wanted, but it doesn't function the way they want. And so I realized that those filters were very important, but now they come from a different place. So I have to continue that pushback. That talk really validated that we all need to put more scrutiny on our products. I think the theme, though, of that talk and Dexter Horthy's talk right after it and the panel right after that is people need to slow down.
Right. Which is interesting because we have not as an industry figured out where speed needs to be. You have some businesses that are like ship faster, just throw it over the wire, ship. Then you have others that are like meticulous and want to go too slow. And interestingly enough, over the years, I think we've even had a couple of shows about it. We've done like our worst sales pitches from customers, potential prospective customers. Like you wrote a blog article a long time ago that you're the guy that has to hear everybody's bad idea. The reason that I bring this up is because I don't even know if it's a speed problem. I just think people have bad ideas.
Well, people jump right into execution now. And that's kind of the problem. Instead of spending some time thinking about what you want, and we've put almost design behind engineering in the sense that we ship the MVP first, and then you end up with more of a design backlog. Again, looking at Dax's talk was, well, now design has to polish all this stuff that made its way into the product because MVPs look almost ready. We ship them. They want to put it in front of users quickly, but then it's not at the right design quality. And so quality is suffering pretty heavily. And this comes back to, the panel talked a lot about taste and what does taste mean? And a lot of that comes from learning your users. It comes from just being out in the world. That was a big part of what they were talking about, was just read books, watch movies, listen to music, go to brunch with your friends. I think Sunil said he's like, go live your life, be around humans. You build products for humans. So none of that got any faster. The idea generation process, you're able to iterate more quickly through bad ideas, but you really have to show some restraint to not actually ship those in the product, because you end up with a really disjointed feeling product. And it really got me thinking about some of our own products, specifically Fin Forecasting, how we did kind of throw the kitchen sink at it. And in some ways, I feel like there was a little bit of a detriment there because now I understand the product. We use it, but it's very hard for I have to rethink this from the perspective of what is this like for the very first user coming into this thing? And I never really gave that a thought. I really just built a product that I knew that I understood. And again, we didn't really put any restraint in place. Any idea someone wanted, they could put in. And then I ended up spending weeks pulling stuff out.
Right.
And that's a time loss.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also there's an age upon us right now, especially in service of customers. We're not just working on our own product all the time. Like customers have a wish list, and it just seems like that wish list just gets implemented without any real checks and balances. And we used to use general friction of just the process to
business
just
constraints
slow it
dictate.
down. And there's a whole room. There's almost 1,000 people here that are experiencing the same thing, and they work for a variety of different types of businesses over many different industries. Everybody is shipping too quickly.
But it's funny because if you go on Twitter, or what you see are people running hundreds of parallel agents,
Yeah,
people burning through tokens.
crazy.
And if you're like me, you're looking at this going, am I not using this right? I don't have all these sub agents running. Well, I'll tell you right now, looking at the people we've talked to, the people who were giving the talks were also dumbfounded. They just sat
Right,
there like, I don't do that. I'm not really sure who's doing that.
right.
And the people we talked to at the table were even that we have workflows, we're doing, we're experimenting, but nobody talked about running lots and lots of agents. There was someone there who said that their company is currently ranking, though, the employees based on it was either tokens usage, lines of code, but they were ranking them the way you'd rank a sales team for sales. And I think someone was like, you got to leave that. Like that is not the way. And I fully agree. To me, my whole career, the prevailing wisdom is doing more with less code. And less code increases your surface area for problems. The wisdom we've gained over the last 50 years of computing does not suddenly just go away. And I think we're learning that. And I loved Dexter Horthy's talk because he talks about how 6 months ago I made this claim and I was wrong. He's like, you don't need to read the code. You can just push, 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 push. He goes, we did that for 6 months. It was a big mistake. And now we have tons of slop, and it's not a efficiency gain if I have to read the plan and I have to read the code, because before I could just read the code. Now I got to read these two things, but his thing now is read the code. He had a much more concise planning. I want to say he had a much more detailed way to develop a plan and work in vertical slices, which is something you and I have talked about, and how to really effectively guide the agent, and then continuing to read the code, not to outsource the decision making. Aim for 2 to 3x faster, which is what I've always felt like. I go, this doubles or triples my output, but don't aim for 10x. If you shoot for 10x, what you're going to end up with is a bunch of slop. And the big point that he made was, it really resonated, is that kind of slop, that inefficiency shows up in months and years, not days. So you have people going, look at how much we're shipping. They have not run into the problem yet of what that causes. That's going to show up 6 months to a year down the line, which is the wisdom behind clean code to begin. Like cleaner, all of the techniques we use around architecture, all of those old books you probably read back in the day, those patterns are there to make long-term maintenance of software better. And that didn't change.
You know what I find interesting? The word has been eluding me a little bit, but I think from what I see, just like outsider's perspective looking in, I can't really claim any of these techniques. I don't know what works. I don't know what people want, etc. Overall, I'm hearing that there is like this craving for an intimacy in the code base that we've lost with AI. And I heard it this morning around the breakfast table. Everybody's kind of sharing their war stories. We're talking about different optimization tools and workflows, and like, what is everybody using to feel like they're operating most successfully. One of the conversations was about like the improvement of models over a period of time. And so we've been using these models since they were available. And we have code out there and products that are working and function on this and all of that. I can't help but wonder, when is refactor going to happen? Like, when is all of that old model going to be bloated, going to be irrelevant? There was a cleaner, simpler way, which comes back to what your motto is, which is let's try to solve the let's try to solve the problem with the least amount of code possible. And I just wonder, like, was an old model less efficient? Is a new model more efficient? When do you go back and refactor? Does the client find that valuable? Do you run that in parallel continuously?
This is the thing, you're saving your client from themselves. The refactor is valuable when 6 months down the line, they ask for a small change and suddenly it can't be done because your code was structured poorly. Now, the wisdom that the AI companies would like you to believe is just rewrite the whole app.
Yeah,
of
right.
course, that uses more tokens. Run as many loops, burn as many tokens as you can. Everybody was laughing about that. The speakers today were joking around about just use more. Someone from OpenAI was there.
Right.
And they said, no, this is not how we actually do this.
Right.
So this is where refactoring is a part of your engineering process. That matters not to the client. but it will matter to them in what you output at the end. And you should still be refactoring as you go through. This is where reading the code is helpful, because you're not just letting things slip through. Now, do I read every single line? No. As you get better at engineering and you've had years of coding, know the types, the spots. When it finally implement, you look at a pull request, you know the spots that are really critical and that could get kind of hairy. Am I going through and reading every piece of HTML for certain? No, usually I'll look at the UI and I'll kind of glance at it and can tell. And Sunil talked about this in the panel, that he's thankful that he had years of hand engineering, because from building these UIs slowly, he's developed a taste or an opinion and an eye for this. And if you're just going in it from the AI perspective, you may not get that period anymore. And that's where my theory has always felt that education is almost more important now, because a young engineer needs the time to actually hand code and move slower, so that so they don't stunt their career. So later on, they're going to be able to move fast, because you do want to develop that eye. It's when you go to art school. I remember when I went to New Paltz, there were art students, and I was originally an art major and changed, but some of the earliest projects were building things like color wheels. This was not painting the Mona Lisa, right? But it was designed to give you this education broadly in how these types of things worked and how the colors came together and color theory and how you pair colors. And so you took time in school to learn these things from first principles. So when you went and did this professionally, now you can move fast. And people are going to have to reckon with the idea that that is a little bit more of the process now, that you're going to want that time. And I would be remiss not to mention one of the best documentaries that I've ever watched is the Closure documentary. Just came out, free on YouTube. Gotta plug it. I'm a very big fan of Rich Hickey's style, and he calls this hammock-driven development. And he talks about taking a sabbatical to design the language Closure and reading these white papers and sitting in the hammock, handwriting some specs and just really taking the time to marinate and think. And this is something I think that gets lost in the world of do, and we've all been there, to just sit and think. And if you're a young engineer, I think that's going to be a very, very important part of your education, where you can just sit and think deeply and read and learn. And you're going to develop the thing that's very important, taste. You develop the taste from not just human experiences, but even taste in code, from writing code yourself and feeling the pain of when it's not quite right and pushing back on you.
You know, we're talking a lot about engineering because we're just here at this conference. Like, this is the type of people. But like, man, apply what you just said to any professional craft. You know, we have such volume of marketing slop out there, for example. But the teams that lock themselves in a hotel room to come out with the next best idea, no tools, just creatives, are pushing the best campaigns. You know, like, choose any category that you want. I think everybody's in this race to adopt the new tooling. Is the thing speed and just volume, or is it really accuracy? Is it really like that intimacy with, in this case, the code base and making clean decisions? But is it like the expansive knowledge of the domain compounded over a career? And so someone last night, I don't even know who it was. It might have been Serge the Lion, and it might have been him talking about like what is the gap of education for anybody trying to pursue a career of engineering starting today. It brings me back to like we did that presentation at Baruch College. Like, the mountain of knowledge that they have to climb seems insurmountable.
Well, the days of going to a 6-week boot camp and getting a 6-figure job, that was the unrealistic expectation that people set. And I think now it takes you years to get up to speed. You do need that. We're also still figuring this out. The speaker just this morning, Dexter, mentioned that what he said 6 months ago, he's now retracting that. The reason we have so many senior engineers, why we're not hiring a lot of juniors right now, is we're figuring out what we're going to teach them. These techniques are still so new. So there's one aspect of, yes, the senior engineer is more powerful with AI and there's less work to do somehow. Maybe I think there's another aspect of, we don't even know where we would tell them to start, because senior engineers are developing a process, giving it to the junior, and it's falling apart because they don't have all the tacit knowledge that the senior has, that they're sort of running in the background, that they're taking for granted. So we need talks like this, conferences like this, we also need to keep experimenting because we're figuring out what this is. What does an AI engineering course look like in college? And how is a professor going to develop that? They don't even develop software most days. They teach how to build software, but it's the people boots on the ground using this stuff at the cutting edge that are going to build the course material that colleges are going to need to teach. And so we're still figuring that out.
And so it comes back to what we always talk about, which is really the pursuit of the craft, pursuit of mastery. I think all of these people that are presenting to us today have that in the back of their mind. It's been a compounding of a career. It's always been the pursuit of mastery. It's not really the pursuit of shortcuts. It's that everybody that has run at a shortcut is quickly finding out that that was the wrong way.
That's correct.
Everybody's looking for this like crazy efficiency, but
It gets us
unfortunately,
the year of the get rich quick scheme.
yeah, that's how it feels. Like, it's a race to break. You're moving as fast as you possibly can to only find out that you built the wrong thing. And what I really liked about Dax's presentation is how we started, which is you just don't have any good ideas. Doesn't matter how fast you run. Doesn't matter how good you think your idea is. The only litmus test for quality is cash. Is somebody willing to pay or use that thing?
Well,
Right? If
and
it's
do
like an
they
open
stick
source
around?
product.
Do they enjoy the thing?
That's right. It's a part of their life.
He didn't say cash. His thing was
No,
no.
that's just a big, that is a
No,
big test.
that's what are people willing to fork over money for the thing that you're building or use it? The thing that he said was this: could a person who has no knowledge of your product find that feature?
Mhm.
And I thought that was such an interesting idea because it really got me thinking about our own product. And I
Sure.
said, a person who has no knowledge of this, how would they know this existed? And if they can't find that thing, is that thing better off not existing?
Not
Some
existing.
products can be just too big. And I think Salesforce suffers from this. Everybody was singing Salesforce's praises because they created an AI that did away with their UI. Guys, the Salesforce UI was the worst thing I've ever used in my life. Nobody can find their way around it. They literally have a degree in Salesforce.
Yep.
You can get a full-on certification because the product is such a big fat mess that nobody could go in there and figure out how to use it. So of course they needed to build that AI where you just ask it and it'll give you back because nobody could find their way back to anything that they looked at before. In that world, my prediction is this is not some revolutionary new thing. This is them trying to put a big fat Band-Aid over what has become a big fat messy product.
And isn't that the wisdom is like release the least amount of feature set that you possibly can. It's so hard. It's so hard not to just chase squirrels and release every great idea that you have. Like, why not? The power is too great. The discipline though, like the intimacy of the problem to figure out what is the least amount of feature set that I need to prove that this is valuable to a consumer or a user. That's a mastercraft in itself. Like we still struggle with that, and we build hundreds of pieces of software, and it's because it's emotional.
Well, it's also because you don't think that thinking time is valuable. Like when you're logging your time for a task or you're estimating as an engineer, you're thinking about the time at the keyboard, but you're not thinking like Rich Hickey. You're not thinking about that time in the hammock where you were deciding and going back and forth and weighing possibilities in your mind of what the best idea was.
You know, there's such a pressure, dude. I'm like thinking about it in real time right now. There is such a pressure. I mean, look at what the fuck we're doing right now. There's such a pressure to produce.
Oh yeah.
There, like, you're right, man. Like I give myself such pressure to be especially for sales, you give yourself such pressure to be at the desk and grind. And every time I leave and go out in the world, something magic happens. I meet a new person, I get a new idea, I make a new relationship. I think about ditching an old relationship, whatever that might be, with a vendor, with
performative in a different way. You do right. Like you have to live with that ranking of, honestly, the person who makes the most sales is your most valuable salesperson. It's not the same with code. The person who writes the most lines of code might not be your most valuable.
That might be your biggest liability.
That might be your biggest liability. It's it's a very different place. But even in sales, people can smell the bullshit on all those mass emails that are going out, and everybody's talking about it. How there's like an enshittification of the inbox, and people say, I don't check my messages. The only way to get in touch with people is to get them in person because now they know you're a real person.
So, yo, if you're at AI Engineer Miami, come say hi to us, dude. Like, we could just record with people impromptu on the spot. We could bring them back to this obnoxiously large hotel room that we got. And I'm stoked to be here. I don't think we travel often enough for these types of events. I mean, look how much shared suffering that we have. People are experiencing from all over the world the things that we talk about in privacy. So I love just getting out of the house and meeting new people from all over the world. But we also kind of just keep ourselves in New York. I mean, it is kind of like the
Well,
tour major
that's
conferences,
one of our biggest
but
advantages.
it's really nice to just break out, and like it's amazing to be here in South Beach. And yo, if you find us, I'll just let you know. If you find us, ask me for my business card because it's just cold hard cash, baby. Cold hard cash. It's a real $2 bill. Yeah.
I guess.